The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched before Hyunwoo Park like a massive theater where he was always the unwelcome actor. The ceiling rose so high that clouds could form in the upper reaches, and the walls were made of some crystal that changed colors based on the mood of the room. Today, the walls showed angry reds and dismissive purples, which meant the other species were feeling particularly hostile toward humanity. Hyunwoo adjusted his formal diplomatic robes and kept his face blank as he walked to the human section. The robes were uncomfortable and made him look smaller than he actually was, but that was the point. For 3 long years, he had worn these robes and smiled politely while the other species treated humans like trained animals. Mira Kim sat beside him, her fingers moving quickly over her data pad as she recorded everything that was said. She had been doing this job for 2 years now, and Hyunwoo had watched her go from excited young diplomat to someone who barely spoke anymore unless she had to. The constant insults had worn her down, just like they had worn down everyone on the human delegation. Do-Young Lee stood behind them in his military uniform, his hands clasped behind his back in the perfect picture of a soldier at attention. The other species found it amusing that humans still used military ranks and ceremonies. They thought it was primitive. Do-Young had been called a quaint war player more than once, and each time he had simply nodded and thanked them for their observation. The Vorthak delegation entered first, as they always did. They were tall, thin creatures that looked like someone had stretched humans until they were 8 feet tall and covered them in gray skin. Their leader, Elder Vexthar, walked with the kind of confidence that came from knowing you were the strongest person in the room. His yellow eyes swept over the human section with the same interest someone might show for furniture. The Klaxons came next, their insect-like bodies clicking across the floor in perfect synchronization. They moved like a single organism, which made sense since they shared a hive mind. When one Klaxon learned something, they all knew it instantly. This made them excellent at gathering information and terrible at keeping secrets from each other. They had been the first to suggest that humans might be useful as a managed resource. The ethereals floated in last, their crystalline bodies humming with harmonic vibrations that most species found beautiful. Humans found the sound annoying, like listening to someone scrape their fingernails on glass, but they had learned to smile and compliment the ethereals on their lovely songs. The ethereals were the most advanced species in the council, and they never let anyone forget it. Elder Vexthar called the session to order with a wave of his long, thin hand. "We gather today to discuss the continued integration of our newest members," he said, his voice carrying the tone of someone discussing a mildly interesting science experiment. "The humans have been with us for 3 years now, and it is time to evaluate their usefulness." Hyunwoo felt his jaw clench, but kept his diplomatic smile in place. Mira's stylus paused for just a moment before continuing to move across her pad. Do-Young remained perfectly still, but Hyunwoo could see the tiny muscle in his neck that always twitched when he was angry. The Klaxon speaker, a creature called Prime Voice, stepped forward. "The human colonies have proven adequate for basic resource extraction," it said in the buzzing, multi-layered voice that all Klaxons used. "Their population grows at an acceptable rate, and they show proper deference to council authority." Proper deference. Hyunwoo translated that in his head. Do they do what we tell them without asking questions? It was true, of course. For 3 years, humanity had followed every council directive, accepted every trade agreement that favored other species, and smiled politely when their requests were denied. An ethereal named Crystal Song began to vibrate, at a frequency that indicated it wanted to speak. "The humans have shown remarkable adaptability to council protocols," it sang in harmonics that made Hyunwoo's teeth ache. "However, their emotional responses remain primitive and unpredictable. We recommend continued monitoring." Continued monitoring. Another phrase that sounded much nicer than what it actually meant. Hyun-woo knew that every human world had ethereal observation posts watching everything they did. Every communication was recorded, every technological development was reported, and every population center was mapped down to the individual building. Elder Vexthar nodded slowly. Indeed, the humans have proven to be cooperative, which brings us to today's primary agenda item. He gestured to a holographic display that appeared in the center of the chamber. The Vorthek hegemony requires additional space for a new mining operation. We propose the relocation of 3 human colonies to make room for this vital project. The display showed 3 human worlds, each home to millions of people. Farming worlds where families had lived for generations, building communities and raising children under alien suns. Now they were just colored dots on a map, obstacles to be moved out of the way. The colonies in question are relatively small, Elder Vexthar continued, and their populations can be easily relocated to other suitable worlds. The humans have proven quite adaptable to new environments. Mira's stylus stopped moving entirely. Hyunwoo could hear her breathing become shallow and quick. These weren't just random colonies they were discussing. One of them was New Seoul, where Mira's family had moved 5 years ago to start a new life. Du Young's hand moved slightly, just enough to touch the communication device on his belt. It was a small gesture that nobody else would notice, but Hyunwoo knew it meant he was sending a coded message to the human fleet. Just a status update, nothing more. But it made Hyunwoo feel slightly better to know that someone was keeping track of what was happening here. The proposed relocation would begin immediately, Elder Vexthar said, to allow the mining operation to commence as soon as possible. The humans will, of course, be compensated fairly for any inconvenience. Compensated fairly. Hyunwoo almost laughed at that. The last time humans had been compensated fairly for a forced relocation, each family had received enough credits to buy a small apartment on a space station. Millions of people had been forced to leave their homes, and the council had treated it like a generous gift. The other delegations began to murmur their approval. The depths, aquatic creatures that lived in specially designed water tanks, gurgled, something that their translator rendered as a reasonable request. The Silicon Collective, living machines that thought in mathematical concepts, calculated that the mining operation would increase overall galactic efficiency by 12%. Hyunwoo stood slowly, feeling every eye in the chamber turn toward him. This was the moment where he was supposed to accept the proposal gracefully, perhaps negotiate for slightly better compensation, and thank the council for their consideration of human needs. Instead, he found himself looking at Elder Vexthar's smug face and feeling something he had not felt in 3 years. Anger. Pure, clean anger that burned away the diplomatic conditioning and reminded him what it felt like to be human. "We will consider the proposal with all due diligence," he said, in his most diplomatic voice. "However, we would appreciate more time to consult with the affected populations." Elder Vexthar's yellow eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course," he said. "You have 48 standard hours to prepare your response. We trust you will make the correct decision." The correct decision. Not the right decision, or the fair decision, but the correct one. The one that put human needs last and council convenience first. As the session ended and the other delegations filed out, Hyunwoo remained seated, staring at the holographic display that still showed the 3 human worlds marked for destruction. Mira was crying quietly beside him, trying to hide her tears behind her datapad. Du Young stepped closer, his hand still resting on his communication device. "Sir," Du Young said quietly, "we have a priority message from Captain Choi. He needs to speak with you immediately." Hyunwoo nodded and stood up, his legs feeling strangely weak. For 3 years, he had played the role of the submissive human, diplomat, bowing and scraping and accepting whatever scraps the council threw his way. But looking at those three worlds on the display, knowing that millions of humans were about to lose everything they had built, he felt something crack inside. His chest. The diplomatic mask was getting harder to wear. The human embassy quarters felt different when Hyun-woo walked through the doors an hour later. The same white walls, the same simple furniture, the same earth plants growing in pots by the windows, but somehow everything felt charged with electricity. Mira followed him inside, her eyes still red from crying, while Do-young sealed the door behind them and activated the privacy shields. Captain Woo-bin Choi was waiting in the secure conference room, along with three people Hyun-woo had never seen before. That should have been impossible. The human delegation was small and everyone knew everyone else. But these three strangers sat at the table like they belonged there, wearing simple clothes that somehow made them more intimidating than any uniform could. "Ambassador," Captain Choi said, standing as they entered. "Thank you for coming quickly. We have a situation that requires immediate attention." The woman at the head of the table looked up as they approached. She was small and quiet-looking, the kind of person you might pass on the street without noticing. Her name tag said Ye-jin, SEO, Intelligence Division. Hyun-woo had never heard of an intelligence division in the Human Diplomatic Corps. "Please, sit down," Ye-jin said, her voice carrying an authority that made everyone obey immediately. "What you are about to see is classified at the highest levels. Before we begin, I need to know if anyone here has had any communication with non-human species in the last 72 hours outside of official council business." Everyone shook their heads. Mira looked confused, and Hyun-woo felt the same way. Why would routine personal communication matter? Ye-jin activated a holographic display that filled the air above the table. "For the past 18 months, we have been monitoring all communications between council species regarding human affairs. What we discovered is significantly worse than we anticipated." The display showed a map of the galaxy with human colonies marked in blue dots. But there were far more blue dots than there should have been. Hyun-woo counted quickly and realized there were at least 3 times as many colonies shown as he knew existed. "The 3 colonies they want to relocate today," Ye-jin continued, "are not being moved for mining operations. They are being moved to processing facilities." A new man spoke up from across the table. His name tag read, Jin Ho-yoon, Strategic Intelligence. "Processing facilities for what?" Mira asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer would be terrible. Jin Ho touched the display, and new images appeared. Construction diagrams, shipping manifests, communication logs between Vorthak officials. The words were in multiple alien languages, but the translation software had helpfully converted everything to Korean. "Processing facilities for humans," Jin-ho said simply. "The Vorthak have been planning to harvest human populations for biological materials. Our bone structure is apparently ideal for certain construction purposes, and our neural tissue has properties they find useful for their computer systems." The room went completely silent. Hyun-woo felt like someone had punched him in the stomach, hard enough to drive all the air from his lungs. Mira made a small choking sound and covered her mouth with her hands. "This is impossible," Do-young said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The Council has laws against this kind of thing. The Galactic Accords specifically prohibit the exploitation of sentient species." The third stranger, a woman named Da-eun-oh, laughed bitterly. "The Galactic Accords have an exception for species that are classified as pre-sentient or developing intelligence. Guess how humanity has been classified in the official records?" More documents appeared on the display. Official council classifications, psychological evaluations, intelligence assessments. Every single document classified humans as promising but limited, or developing but not fully sentient, or suitable for managed development. "They never intended to treat us as equals," Ye-jin said. "From the moment we made first contact, we were classified as a resource to be managed. The 3 years of diplomatic courtesy were just them studying us to determine the most efficient way to harvest us." Hyun-woo found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. How long have you known about this? The intelligence-gathering operation began 6 months after we joined the council, Captain Choi said. We suspected something was wrong when every trade agreement favored other species and every territorial dispute was decided against us. But we did not have proof until recently. A new voice spoke up from the doorway. Actually, we have known much longer than that. Everyone turned to see a man in a uniform that Hyun-woo did not recognize. It was dark blue, almost black, with no insignia or rank markers. The man looked ordinary except for his eyes, which were the coldest things Hyun-woo had ever seen. Who are you? Do-young demanded, his hand moving toward his weapon. I am Tae-hyun, Bae, the man said, walking into the room like he owned it. I represent certain interests that have been observing this situation for a very long time. And before you ask, Captain Lee, your weapon will not function in this room. We disabled all electronic devices except for our own when we arrived. Do-young tried to draw his sidearm and found that Tae-hyun was correct. The weapon was completely dead. What interests? Hyun-woo asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer would change everything. Tae-hyun smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Human interests, Ambassador. Real human interests, not the pretend diplomatic game you have been playing here. The holographic display changed again, showing new information that made everyone in the room lean forward. Ship movements, military deployments, resource allocations on a scale that dwarfed anything the Council had ever seen. The truth is, Ambassador Park, that humanity never needed the Galactic Council, Tae-hyun said. We joined it to study them, not the other way around. For 3 years, you have been playing the role of the weak, submissive human diplomat while our real operations gathered intelligence on every species in the galaxy. Mira found her voice. Real operations? 47 deep space monitoring stations, Tae-hyun said, touching the display to show their locations. 16 research facilities dedicated to reverse engineering alien technology. 312 ships that the Council does not know exist, and approximately 2 million personnel working on projects that would make the Vorthak reconsider their dietary preferences. The numbers were staggering. Hyun-woo tried to process what he was hearing, but it was like trying to understand a foreign language. This is impossible. Where did we get the resources for all of this? You have been thinking too small, Ambassador, Tae-hyun said. You see 3 human colonies threatened with destruction. I see 3 expendable forward observation posts that have served their purpose. The room erupted in angry voices. Mira stood up so fast her chair fell over. Expendable? Those are people. My family lives on New Seoul. Tae-hyun's expression did not change. Your family was evacuated 6 weeks ago, along with everyone else who mattered. The people on those colonies now are volunteers who understand the risks of their assignment. Assignment? Do-young demanded. To maintain the illusion of human weakness while our real forces prepared for this day, Tae-hyun said. The day when the Council finally revealed their true intentions and gave us justification for what comes next. Ye-jin had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. Ambassador, we need you to understand something. The human you have been pretending to be for 3 years, that weak, submissive diplomat who accepts insults and unfair treaties, that person never existed. You have been playing a role in a much larger operation. Hyun-woo sat down heavily, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. What? Operation? Captain Choi answered. The complete intelligence infiltration of the Galactic Council and the preparation for humanity's real introduction to galactic politics. Tae-hyun activated a new section of the display, showing real-time tactical information that made Hyun-woo's head spin. Ships moving in formations he had never seen. Weapons that operated on principles he did not understand. defensive systems that could apparently stop entire fleets. The Vorthak fleet that is currently moving toward the 3 colonies, Tae-hyun said, will encounter our actual defensive capabilities in approximately 6 hours. It will be educational for all parties involved. You are going to start a war, Mira said, her voice barely audible. No, Tae-hyun replied. We are going to end one. A war that began the moment the council decided that humans were livestock, to be managed rather than people to be respected. Du Young leaned forward. What do you need from us? Tomorrow, you will return to the council chambers for your official response to their relocation proposal, Tae-hyun said. You will deliver a message that we have prepared. After that, the diplomatic phase of this operation will be complete. Hyun-woo looked around the room at the faces of people he thought he knew. Mira, who was apparently more than just a note-taking assistant. Du Young, whose military background was clearly much deeper than anyone had suspected. Captain Choi, who was evidently connected to an organization that could hide entire fleets from the most advanced species in the galaxy. What message? He asked. Tae-hyun's cold smile returned. The one that explains to the Galactic Council what happens when humans stop being polite. The council chambers looked exactly the same when Hyun-woo entered the next morning, but everything felt different. The crystal walls still changed colors with the mood of the room, the ceiling still stretched impossibly high, and the various species still took their assigned places with the same arrogant confidence they had shown for 3 years. But now Hyun-woo knew what lay beneath their polite diplomatic language, and the knowledge sat in his stomach like a cold stone. He was not wearing his diplomatic robes. Instead, he wore simple black clothing that fit him properly and made him look like what he actually was, rather than what the council expected him to be. Mira walked beside him in similar attire, her datapad replaced with a small device that Tae-hyun had given her the night before. Du Young followed behind them, but his military uniform was different now, made of some material that seemed to absorb light and bearing insignia that none of the council species would recognize. The biggest change was the man who entered behind them. Fleet Admiral Sun Ho Kang had arrived on a ship that appeared on no council sensors and carried credentials that granted him diplomatic immunity under laws that predated the current galactic government. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. When he walked, it was with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle and did not intend to start now. Elder Vexthar noticed the changes immediately. His yellow eyes narrowed as he watched the human delegation take their seats, and Hyun-woo could see him trying to understand what was different. The other species noticed too. The klaxons were chittering among themselves in frequencies too high for most species to hear, but Hyun-woo's new equipment translated their conversation automatically. They were confused and slightly worried. The ethereals were humming in harmonics that indicated concern, and even the usually emotionless Silicon Collective was running probability calculations at a rate that suggested anxiety. Ambassador Park, Elder Vexthar said as the session began, we trust you have reached a decision regarding our proposal for colony relocation. Hyun-woo stood slowly, feeling the weight of 3 years of careful acting fall away from his shoulders. When he spoke, his voice carried none of the careful deference that the council had become accustomed to hearing from him. We have indeed reached a decision, he said, but first, we believe there are some misconceptions that need to be corrected. Mira activated her device, and the air above the council chamber filled with a massive holographic display that showed information the council had never seen before. Communication intercepts, classified documents, strategic plans, and detailed records of everything the council species had said about humanity when they thought no one was listening. For 3 years, Hyun-woo continued, humanity has been a member of this council. During that time, we have been told that we are valued partners in galactic civilization. We have been assured that our interests are protected and our rights are respected. We have been promised equality and fairness in all council decisions. The display changed to show the real council communications about humanity, plans to relocate human populations for harvesting, discussions of human biological materials as trade commodities, detailed studies of how to manage human colonies for maximum resource extraction with minimum effort. What we discovered, Hyunwoo said, his voice growing harder with each word, is that every single promise was a lie. Elder Vexthar tried to interrupt. Ambassador, this is highly inappropriate. These communications are classified council business and cannot possibly be authentic. Admiral Kang spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. Elder Vexthar, I suggest you remain silent until you understand exactly what kind of mistake your species has made. The tone of his voice made several council members step backward involuntarily. It was not loud or threatening, but it carried the absolute certainty of someone who held all the cards in a game where the stakes were survival. Du Young stepped forward and activated a different section of the display. Allow me to introduce myself properly, he said. I am not a military liaison. I am Commander Du Young Lee of Human Strategic Intelligence. For the past 3 years, I have been monitoring council activities and gathering information on your military capabilities, technological resources, and strategic weaknesses. The new display showed detailed analyses of every council species' military forces, ship designs, weapon specifications, defensive systems, and tactical doctrines. But more than that, it showed weaknesses, critical flaws in Vorthak armor plating, frequency vulnerabilities in Klaxon hive mind communications, resonance patterns that could disrupt ethereal crystalline structures. You see, Du Young continued, while you were studying us and planning to harvest us, we were studying you and learning exactly how to stop you. The chamber erupted in angry voices from multiple species. The Vorthak delegation was demanding to know how humans had obtained classified military information. The Klaxons were buzzing frantically as they tried to change their communication, frequencies in real time. The ethereals were harmonizing in patterns that indicated extreme distress. Mira stood up and activated another section of the display. My name is Mira Kim, she said, her voice carrying a confidence that had not been there the day before. For 3 years, I have been recording every word spoken in these chambers. But more than that, I have been analyzing every gesture, every expression, every unconscious signal that revealed what you really thought about humanity. The new section showed psychological profiles of every council member, detailed analyses of their motivations, fears, and decision-making patterns, information that could be used to predict their actions or manipulate their choices. Every insult you thought was subtle, Mira continued, every condescending gesture you thought we did not notice, every casual reference to human inferiority that you assumed we were too primitive to understand. We recorded it all, analyzed it all, and learned from it all. Elder Vexthar found his voice again. This is espionage. This is a violation of council law and galactic treaty. Admiral Kang smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Elder Vexthar, you might want to review those laws more carefully, specifically the sections that deal with the legal rights of sentient species, because according to your own classifications, humanity is not considered fully sentient, and therefore has no legal protection under council law. The Admiral gestured to a new section of the display that showed humanity's official classification in council records. Presentient resource species suitable for managed development, he read aloud. Not eligible for full council protection or legal standing. Recommended for careful monitoring and eventual integration into galactic labor systems. The silence that followed was deafening. Every species in the chamber knew what those classifications meant, but seeing them displayed openly made them realize that their secret was no longer secret. So you see, Admiral Kang continued, everything we have done is perfectly legal under your own laws. We are not required to respect the sovereignty of species that do not recognize our legal right to exist as equals. Hyunwoo stepped forward again. But here is what you failed to understand about humanity. We were not being diplomatic because We are weak. We were being diplomatic because we are patient. The display changed to show the true scope of human presence in the galaxy. Not the handful of colonies the Council knew about, but thousands of worlds, space habitats, research stations, and military installations scattered across multiple sectors. The scale was breathtaking, dwarfing the combined territory of all Council species. "For 3 years," Hyunwoo said, "you have been watching us and assuming that what you could see was all there was to see. You observed our colonies and thought you understood our capabilities. You monitored our communications and believed you knew our intentions. You studied our technology and concluded that you were superior in every way. Du Young activated tactical displays that showed human military, assets the Council had never suspected existed. Ships that could phase through dimensions, weapons that operated on principles beyond current galactic science, defensive systems that made Council technology look primitive. What you were actually observing," Du Young said, "was a carefully constructed performance designed to make you reveal your true nature. Every piece of technology we shared with you was deliberately obsolete. Every strategic briefing we provided was calculated misdirection. Every time you thought you were studying us, we were teaching you to underestimate us." Mira stepped forward with the final revelation. "The colonies you want to relocate for your processing facilities," she said, "are not defenseless farming communities full of helpless humans. They are forward observation posts staffed by volunteers who have been monitoring your species for intelligence-gathering purposes." The display showed the real defensive capabilities of the 3 worlds the Vorthak wanted to attack. Orbital platforms that could materialize from apparently empty space, energy shields that could withstand star-level bombardment, and response fleets that could travel faster than anything in the Council's arsenal. "Your Vorthak harvesting fleet," Admiral Kang said, checking a chronometer on his wrist, "encountered these defenses approximately 2 hours ago. The engagement lasted 14 seconds. The stunned silence in the Council chamber stretched for nearly a full minute before the reality of the situation began to sink in. The various species were looking at each other with expressions that ranged from confusion to horror, trying to understand how completely they had misunderstood the humans. Elder Vexathar was staring at the tactical display that showed the complete destruction of his people's harvest fleet, his yellow eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "Admiral." Kang gestured to the display, and new information appeared that made several Council members step backward. "Since you seem to be having difficulty processing this information," he said in a voice that remained perfectly calm, "perhaps a more detailed explanation would be helpful." A new figure stepped forward from the human delegation, someone who had been so quiet and unremarkable that most Council members had never noticed her presence. Dr. Sung-Min Han was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes who had spent 3 years being dismissed as a cultural observer whose job was to help humans understand galactic customs. "My actual position," Dr. Han said with a smile that would have made predators nervous, "is Director of Xenobiological Warfare Research. For the past 3 years, I have been studying each of your species to understand your biological and psychological vulnerabilities." The display changed to show detailed biological analyses of every Council species, genetic structures, metabolic processes, neural pathways, and immune system responses. But more than that, it showed ways to exploit weaknesses that most species did not even know they had. "The Vorthak," Dr. Han said, pointing to detailed diagrams, "have a genetic flaw in their calcium absorption that can be triggered by specific electromagnetic frequencies. The Klaxons share a hive mind that can be disrupted by targeted viral programs introduced through their communication networks. The ethereals are crystalline beings whose harmonic resonance can be shattered by precise sound waves." She gestured to additional displays showing other Council species. "The depths require specific water compositions to survive, and their gills can be clogged by microscopic particles designed to mimic their natural food sources. The Silicon Collective processes information through quantum crystalline matrices that can be corrupted by introducing paradoxical logic loops. Elder Vexthar found his voice. This is biological warfare. This is prohibited by every galactic treaty and universal law of civilized behavior. Du Young stepped forward with a data pad that he consulted briefly. Actually, according to your own legal classifications, biological warfare laws only apply to conflicts between sentient species. Since humanity is officially classified as pre-sentient livestock, these weapons would be considered pest control rather than warfare. The implications of their own legal system being turned against them was clearly devastating to the council members. They had created laws to protect themselves while excluding humanity, and now those same laws offered humanity no restrictions on how they could respond to threats. A new voice spoke from the back of the human delegation. Allow me to introduce myself properly as well. The speaker was a man who had been listed in council records as a technical support specialist named Jae Sung Won. He was tall and thin, with calloused hands that suggested he worked with tools, but his eyes held an intelligence that had apparently been hidden for 3 years. I am Chief Engineer Jae Sung Won of the Human Technological Development Division, he said, walking to the front of the group. While you were studying our primitive technology and feeling superior about your advanced systems, I was reverse engineering everything you showed us and improving upon it. The display shifted to show comparative technological analyses that made the Council's best scientists look like children playing with simple toys. Human versions of Vorthak battle cruisers that were faster, stronger, and more heavily armed. Human improvements to Klaxon hive mind technology that could process information at rates that would burn out organic minds. Human adaptations of ethereal quantum manipulation that could restructure matter at the atomic level. Your Vorthak invincible battle cruisers, Chief Engineer Wan said with obvious satisfaction, were based on design principles that humanity discarded as inefficient approximately 50 years ago. Your Klaxon hive mind communications operate on frequencies that human children use for playing games. Your ethereal quantum technology is elegant but impractical for any real application. He activated a new section of the display that showed human technological capabilities that the Council had never imagined. We have ships that can exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We have weapons that can disrupt the fundamental forces that hold atoms together. We have defensive systems that can redirect energy attacks back at their sources with amplified power. The HFY voice began to buzz frantically. This is impossible! Our intelligence showed human technology was centuries behind our own. A quiet woman who had been sitting in the back of the human delegation stood up. Her name tag identified her as Bo-Ra Yu, but the council records listed her as a data management assistant whose job was to help organize human reports for council review. My actual position, Bo-Ra said in a voice that carried surprising authority, is Director of Strategic Deception. Every piece of technology we shared with you was carefully selected to reinforce your assumptions about human capabilities. Every report we submitted was designed to make you underestimate our actual development level. She gestured to the display, which now showed the elaborate deception campaign that had been running for 3 years. When you requested samples of our weapons technology, we gave you designs that were deliberately inefficient. When you asked about our manufacturing capabilities, we showed you facilities that were actually producing children's toys. When you inquired about our scientific research, we shared theories that your own scientists had abandoned centuries ago. Admiral Kang checked his chronometer again. Speaking of our actual capabilities, he said, in approximately 15 minutes, the Klaxon monitoring station that has been observing human space will discover that their quantum communication array has been replaced with a human-designed system that looks identical but operates under our control. The Klaxon delegation erupted in panicked buzzing. Prime Voice began rapidly transmitting messages, trying to contact their monitoring stations, but the responses they received were clearly not what they expected. In 30 minutes, Admiral Kang continued, The ethereal research facility that has been studying human neural patterns will find that their crystalline processing cores have been infiltrated by human consciousness transfer technology. Their harmonic resonance will begin playing human music instead of their usual mathematical calculations. Several ethereals began vibrating at frequencies that indicated extreme distress. Their usual beautiful harmonics became discordant screeches that hurt everyone's ears. In 45 minutes, the Admiral said, the depths underwater cities that have been monitoring human ocean worlds will discover that their water filtration systems have been upgraded with human biotechnology. Instead of filtering out impurities, they will begin producing compounds that make their water taste like human soft drinks. The depths delegation began gurgling in alarm, their aquatic forms thrashing in their specialized tanks. Mira stepped forward with her own revelation. While I was recording council sessions and pretending to be a simple note-taking assistant, I was actually implementing a comprehensive intelligence penetration of all council systems. Every computer network, every communication array, every data storage facility. We have complete access to everything. The display showed the scope of human infiltration into council systems, financial records, military plans, personal communications, scientific research, diplomatic strategies. Everything the council thought was secret had been monitored, recorded, and analyzed by human intelligence systems. We know about the Vorthak. Plans to expand into human space, Mira said. We know about the Klaxon experiments with human neural tissue. We know about the ethereal attempts to decode human consciousness. We know about the depths biological warfare research using human genetic samples. Elder Vexthar was looking around the chamber with growing panic. How long have you been watching us? Hyunwoo smiled, and for the first time in 3 years, it was not a diplomatic smile. Since the day we requested membership in the council. Every conversation, every decision, every private moment when you thought you were safe from human observation. We have been there, watching and learning and preparing for this day. Admiral Kang activated one final section of the display that showed real-time tactical information from across the galaxy. Human fleets moving into position around council worlds. Defensive systems activating on planets that had thought themselves safely isolated, and communication networks being quietly taken over by human technology. The question now, Admiral, Kang said, is not what humanity wants from the Council. The question is what the Council is prepared to offer humanity in exchange for our continued patience. The chamber fell silent again as the Council members realized that everything had changed. They were no longer the dominant powers in the galaxy. They were no longer in control of the situation, and they were no longer dealing with the weak. The silence in the council chamber stretched until it became unbearable. Elder Vexthar was staring at the tactical displays showing human forces positioned around every major council world, his yellow eyes wide with the kind of fear that comes from realizing you have made a mistake that cannot be undone. The other species were looking at each other with expressions of panic, confusion, and the dawning understanding that everything they thought they knew about the galaxy had just been proven wrong. Admiral Kang walked slowly around the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. When he spoke, his voice was calm and reasonable, which somehow made his words more terrifying than any shouting could have been. Let me explain the current situation in terms that everyone can understand, he said. For 3 years, the Galactic Council has been planning to harvest humanity for biological materials. You have classified us as livestock, treated us as resources to be managed, and assumed that our polite behavior indicated weakness and submission. He stopped walking and faced Elder Vexthar directly. You were wrong about everything. The display changed to show a real-time map of the galaxy with human positions marked in blue. There were thousands of blue markers scattered across every sector surrounding every major world, controlling every important trade route. The scope of human presence was overwhelming. While you were watching our 3 little colonies and planning to relocate them for processing, Admiral Kang continued, We were establishing a military presence that could control the entire galaxy, if necessary. Every council world is now within range of human weapons systems. Every major city, every military installation, every government facility. A new figure stepped forward from the human delegation. Commander Inho Shin had been listed in council records as a communications technician, but his bearing and confidence suggested a much more important role. When he activated his section of the display, it showed live feeds from council worlds that made everyone in the chamber gasp. "These are current images from your home planets," Commander Shin said matter-of-factly. "The orbital platforms you are seeing did not exist yesterday. They materialized from dimensional storage when we decided it was time to stop pretending, to be harmless." The feeds showed massive human installations appearing in the skies above Vorthak cities, Klaxon hive complexes, ethereal crystal gardens, and every other major council population center. The installations were clearly defensive in nature, but their weapons were pointed downward. Elder Vexthar found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "What do you want from us?" Hyunwoo stepped forward, no longer the submissive diplomat who had accepted insults and unfair treaties for 3 years. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who represented a power that could reshape the galaxy. "We want very simple things," he said. "We want to be treated as equals rather than livestock. We want fair representation in council decisions rather than token membership. We want our territorial claims respected rather than dismissed. And we want an end to any plans involving the harvesting of human beings for any purpose." He gestured to the display, which now showed detailed proposals for restructuring the entire council system. "We are prepared to offer technological partnerships that will benefit all species. We are willing to share defensive capabilities that will protect council worlds from external threats. We are ready to contribute to galactic civilization in ways that will improve life for everyone." Admiral Kang stepped forward with a slight smile. "However, these offers are contingent on your acceptance of humanity as a full and equal partner in galactic affairs. If you prefer to continue treating us as resources to be managed, we are prepared to demonstrate why that is no longer a viable option." The display changed to show what appeared to be a demonstration of human capabilities. A small asteroid in an uninhabited system simply ceased to exist, not destroyed by any visible weapon, but apparently removed from reality entirely. A moment later, it reappeared in a different location, completely unharmed. "That was our matter displacement technology," Admiral Kang explained casually. "We can move objects of any size to any location instantaneously. Planets, moons, space stations, entire fleets. The applications for both construction and warfare should be obvious." The council members were looking at each other with growing desperation. Prime voice of the Klaxons began buzzing rapidly in their hive mind frequency, but their communications were clearly being disrupted by whatever the humans had done to their systems. A new human stepped forward, someone who had never appeared in any council records at all. Dr. Kyung-Soo Park was an elderly man with kind eyes and a grandfatherly appearance that completely contradicted the authority in his voice when he spoke. "I am Director of Xenopsychological Operations," he said. "For 3 years, I have been studying the psychology of every council species to understand how you think, how you make decisions, and how you respond to various forms of pressure." The display showed psychological profiles that were far more detailed than anything the council had ever seen. Individual analysis of every major political figure, predictive models of how each species would react to different scenarios, and strategic recommendations for managing council politics. The Vorthak respond to displays of superior force and respect strength above all other qualities, Dr. Park said. The Klaxons make decisions based on collective benefit calculations and will change positions rapidly when presented with new data. The Ethereals value harmony and will seek compromise solutions to avoid conflict. He gestured to other sections, showing the remaining council species. The Depths are pragmatic traders who will support whatever position offers the best economic advantage. The Silicon Collective processes everything as mathematical equations and will always choose the option with the highest probability of success. Elder. Vexthar was looking around the chamber desperately, clearly trying to find some way to regain control of the situation. "This is impossible," he said. "How could we have been so wrong about your capabilities?" Mira stepped forward with a datapad that she consulted briefly. "Because you made the classic mistake of assuming that what you could observe was all there. Was to observe," she said. "You saw polite, submissive humans who accepted unfair treatment and concluded that we were weak. You never considered that our behavior might be strategic rather than natural." Du Young activated a new section of the display that showed the true history of human council relations. "From the moment we made first contact, we knew that joining the council would require us to prove our worth. But we also knew that showing our full capabilities immediately would result in a war that nobody wanted. The historical analysis showed human decision-making processes that had led to the 3-year deception campaign, long-term strategic planning, careful intelligence gathering, and gradual positioning of assets for the day when diplomacy would no longer be sufficient. So we chose to appear weak while becoming strong," Du Young continued. "We let you underestimate us while we learned everything about you. We accepted your insults while building weapons that could end your civilizations. We played the role of grateful junior partners while preparing to become your equals whether you wanted us to or not." Admiral Kang checked his chronometer one final time. "The Vorthak Military Command has just received notification that their harvest fleet has been eliminated and their home defense systems have been replaced with human technology. They have exactly 1 hour to formally apologize for their actions and pledge to respect human sovereignty, or they will discover what our matter displacement technology can do to their capital city." The Vorthak delegation erupted in panicked conversation. But Elder Vexthar raised his hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who understood that his species' survival might depend on his next words. "What guarantees do we have that humanity will honor? Any agreements we make?" he asked. Yunwu smiled, and it was the same diplomatic smile he had worn for 3 years, but now everyone in the chamber understood what lay beneath it. "You have the same guarantee we had when we trusted the council to treat us fairly," he said. "None at all. The difference is that now you understand the consequences of betraying that trust." The chamber fell silent as the council members realized that the balance of power had shifted permanently. They were no longer the dominant species dictating terms to weaker civilizations. They were now the weaker civilizations hoping for fair treatment from a power they had badly underestimated. Admiral Kang gestured to the exit. "You have 24 hours to decide whether you want humanity as an ally or as a master," he said. "Choose wisely." As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, leaving the council species to contemplate their new reality, Hyunwoo reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. 3 years of careful acting, 3 years of accepting insults and unfair treatment, 3 years of letting the galaxy believe that humans were weak and harmless. Now everyone knew the truth. Humans were not weak. They were patient. And their patience had finally run out. The age of human equality had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.